to help quell a domestic disturbance. That's not what occurred here. They were
Jim,
used to create a photo opportunity for the president.
Jim,
so
and this photo.
We have now witnessed the president of the United States operating outside the bounds of U.S. law.
What part of the decision?
We are in trouble. This country is being led by a man.
He wanted to be seen outside the gates.
Of course he did. He was taken to a bunker, and he's hiding in a bunker, and he is embarrassed that people know that. So what does he have to do? He has to sic police on peaceful protesters so he can make a big show of being, the little big man walking to a closed down church.
A new report tonight about last year's violent clash between police and protesters in Lafayette Square near the White House. Who can forget the video? Police gassing and pushing away protesters who were demanding racial justice. A short time later, the then president crosses the intersection for a photo op holding a Bible in front of St. John's Church. But now, an inspector general's report says that Park police didn't clear protesters for Trump, but to allow a contractor to install a White House fence. So I want to bring in now CNN's Whitney Wild. Whitney, good evening to you. Thanks for joining. What's the report say about why these protesters were removed and why so harshly?
So, as you point out, there are sort of two questions in that question. So the first is why they were moved out. And what the report says is that for a few days leading up to June 1st, it became clear that as the days were progressing, that protesters would become more, what they describe as, perhaps more violent. So there were examples of protesters assaulting police. One officer, for example, sustaining an injury from a brick thrown at the officer. So there was a lot of concern among law enforcement that as night fell, things were going to get violent. By June 1st, they realized, look, they really need to get this fence up around the White House because this is becoming a real problem. So it was June 1st that a contractor said, all right, we can do the fence, but we're going to need to be able to do it during daylight hours, and we're going to have police presence while we put it up. So the idea was to get the contractor there with all the materials and then assemble a lot of law enforcement there to make sure that the contractor could set up the fence safely. Now, earlier in the day, there was actually a meeting the Attorney General was in that meeting where they were talking about how they were going to affect this. So the plan was to move these protesters out of the way so that the fence could go up. The Attorney General was at that meeting, but he never mentioned that the president would later plan to go over to St. John's Church. Park police say they didn't know that until way later in the day. I mean, sometime between 3 and 5. The meeting with the Attorney General was around 2 o'clock. So that was the plan going into this. Park police used the measures they did because